All right, let's talk about this election in 2024. What was most stunning, perhaps, to me anyway, is Iowa. Not the result. We expected a big Donald Trump win, but the way the other networks and other people characterize it, looking to diminish the former president right away. Talk about the people that would support him. Could not wrap their head around the fact that people would still want to go back to the days in which inflation was low, security was high at the border, trade deals were being cut, and tax deals were allowing the economy to flourish. And when people started putting down MAGA again, and the President of the United States, every other word out of his mouth is MAGA extremist, that struck somebody who's not known as a political pundit, and that is Jamie Dimon, who looks as though he was very impressed, by the way, with Nikki Haley, and if he was going to throw a sport behind anyone, it would be her. But listen to what he said yesterday in Davos.
The Democrats would think a little more carefully when they talk about MAGA. Now, if you look, just take a step back, be honest. He was kind of right about NATO, kind of right about immigration. Mm-hmm. He grew the economy quite well.
China virus.
Tax reform worked. Yeah. He was right about some of China. He wasn't wrong about some of these critical issues. And that's why they're voting for him. And I think people should be a little more respectful of our fellow citizens. And when you guys have people up here, you should always ask the why. This negative talk about MAGA is going to hurt Biden's election campaign.
And right after he said why, what Jamie Dimon said, he said, and ask people why they are supporting Trump, and they support Trump, and he enumerated because of policies that he says Donald Trump got right.
What he's saying is be a little bit more curious. Do you ever consider why people are siding with Donald Trump? Do you think, I know you want to label everyone as hateful and anti-immigrant, but don't you think when you have record Black Americans and Hispanics showing up at his events, don't you think it's more than that? And I just think it's a question, Ainsley, that the media hasn't considered. Why are people supporting the former president? Everyone can't be racist here.
Right. You know, Lawrence, when you go to these diners, they all say border is an issue, the economy's an issue. Both of those were better under Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. When you have to choose between Joe Biden, who doesn't stand up for our country, who world leaders they're not intimidated by him. They were with Donald Trump. When you see what Vladimir Putin did to Ukraine after Donald Trump left, when you see what happened in Israel, when you hear China threatening Taiwan, that was not happening under Donald Trump because world leaders were terrified of him. Moms are worried about national security. I'm sure men are too. We're worried about who's in this country. Donald Trump at one of the rallies this week said that there are terrorists in our country. We're finding people on the border that are on the terror watch list. All of these things were better under Donald Trump. So when it comes to some people say we didn't like his rhetoric on Twitter, when you think about protecting our country, that trumps, no pun intended, all of the other stuff that he was writing on Twitter because we need a strong president.
He said he traveled the country and he talked to people. That's what him and he said. And you got to separate the guy from those policies. And if you don't like the guy, that's fine. But don't put down what they stand for. What it's done, by the way, if your objective is to have him lose, what it's done is made people more determined to back him and look past the things that might bother them. And that's what they're witnessing right now because this president has done the inverse of everything 45 did. 46 was determined to reverse it all. And the policies are the best sales tool that Donald Trump has right now. World events are selling this president.
Ultimately, then it becomes a binary choice. It's very clear where each of the guys stands. You like all of this? That's your guy. You like all of that? That's your guy.
But don't
and a lot of people don't like one of the guys.
But don't hate the person because they don't agree with you. That's his point.
And people are sick of first it was censorship. Now they're looking at your bank account to determine what you're buying at a sporting goods store.
Well, as Brooke said, that was during the Trump administration.
Yeah, but it wasn't Trump doing it. It was the Treasury Department pushed forward by the investigation arm of the Treasury. It was separate from Trump. You didn't tell me Trump was looking at Trump.
Investigating January 6th.
I'm just saying it was during the Trump years, part of the executive branch.
But part of like what we're trying to find out is why the FBI was going after the then president. What was going on? It seems like our our FBI, and even the CIA was looking into our current president more than they were looking into outside threats. Then the current president, now the former president.
And all these people that are throwing Donald Trump in court this year, they're all Democrats. They're doing whatever they can to stop this man. And America's getting tired of it because we see what this is supposed to be a free country. You're supposed to buy something at a store and not have the federal government looking through your bank account.
Well, to their point, it is they're being attacked by extension of Donald Trump. So because you agree with the former president, because you said they're going to go after you as well.
They went after the Catholic Church.
The proof is in the pudding now.
They went after the Tea Party.
Yeah.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.